Have you ever noticed how a single act of kindness can stay with you for years, while countless moments of noise and distraction quickly fade away? It's almost mysterious, isn't it? The way a gentle smile from a stranger or a compassionate word spoken at just the right moment has the power to pierce through all the heaviness we carry. In a world where people chase wealth, power, and recognition, there's something quietly revolutionary about a kind heart. It doesn't make headlines, it doesn't demand applause, yet it changes everything it touches. Like the wind, invisible but undeniable, kindness flows through the unseen spaces of our lives, shaping us in ways we often don't even realize. Buddhist teachings remind us that true blessings are not measured in gold or titles. They are measured in the quality of the heart. A kind heart is the greatest blessing, not because it makes life easier, but because it makes life meaningful. When compassion arises, the world around us softens, pain becomes lighter, conflicts lose their sharp edges, even suffering begins to transform. Think of the times when you were struggling and someone extended even the smallest gesture of care. Maybe they didn't solve your problem. Maybe all they did was listen or offer a gentle look of understanding. But in that moment, wasn't it as if the universe whispered to you, "You are not alone"? That is the invisible power of the heart. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand, it doesn't boast, but it reaches further than any material possession ever could. Ancient sutras tell stories of kings, warriors, and scholars. Yet the heroes that endure in memory are not the ones with the sharpest swords or the richest palaces. They are the ones who had the courage to be compassionate in a world that often rewards cruelty. They are remembered not for what they owned, but for how they made others feel. And here's the paradox. A kind heart costs us nothing, yet it is priceless. You don't need a certain status, a certain bank balance, or even a certain level of knowledge to have it. You only need the willingness to open, to soften, to care. But let's be honest, kindness is not always easy. It can feel risky. In a world filled with competition, showing compassion can seem like a weakness. People may take advantage of it, misunderstand it, or dismiss it. And yet, despite all this, kindness endures. It endures because deep down, every human soul longs for it. We crave it more than we crave wealth or recognition, though we rarely admit it. So why, out of all the blessings life can offer, would Buddhism say a kind heart is the greatest one? Because unlike fleeting pleasures, unlike possessions that can be lost, kindness plants seeds that continue to grow long after the moment has passed. It creates echoes across generations. A kind act today may blossom in the heart of someone tomorrow, shaping a destiny we cannot yet see. That's why when we talk about blessings, we must look beyond fortune and luck, beyond rituals and prayers, and ask, what truly sustains the human spirit? The answer, whispered again and again by wise teachers across centuries, is simple. The heart that knows how to love without condition, the heart that acts with compassion without expecting anything in return. And maybe, just maybe, this is the power that can heal not just one person but the fractured world we live in. If we truly want to understand why a kind heart is called the greatest blessing, we first need to explore what it really means to have one. Not just the idea of being nice, but the profound, transformative force behind it. When we hear the phrase, a kind heart, what do we imagine? Is it someone who smiles often, someone who gives to charity, someone who avoids conflict? The truth is, a kind heart is much more than a social gesture or a polite smile. In Buddhist teachings, kindness is not just about what we do, it is about the state of our being. It flows from the depth of our awareness, from a mind free of greed, hatred, and ignorance. To have a kind heart is to see the humanity in others, even when the world tells us not to. It is to look past appearances, past mistakes, past differences, and to recognize the shared suffering that binds us all. When the Buddha spoke of compassion, K-A-R-U letter 1E47A macron, and loving kindness metta, he wasn't describing an emotion that flickers for a moment. He was describing a way of living, a force that shapes every choice, every word, every step we take. A kind heart is not weakness, It is strength, the kind of strength that does not need to dominate others. Think of water, gentle, yielding, soft to the touch. And yet over time, water carves valleys, shapes mountains, and sustains life itself. That is the nature of kindness, quiet but unstoppable. But let us be honest with ourselves. Kindness is easy when people are polite, when life is comfortable. The real question is, can we keep a kind heart when others are cruel, when we are misunderstood, when we are wronged? This is where kindness transforms from a polite behavior into a spiritual practice. In the Dhammapada, an ancient collection of the Buddhist teachings, there is a verse that says, "Hatred is never appeased by hatred. Hatred is appeased only by love." This is an eternal law. A kind heart, then, is the refusal to return harm with harm. It does not mean tolerating injustice blindly. It means responding in a way that does not create more suffering. It means choosing to be a healer instead of a wounder, even when our ego demands revenge. Let's bring this closer to daily life. Imagine you are driving and someone cuts you off. Instantly, anger rises. Your heart races. A part of you wants to shout, to punish. But what if, in that moment, you remember kindness? You imagine that maybe the person is rushing to the hospital, or maybe they are overwhelmed by something you cannot see. Suddenly, instead of adding fuel to the fire, you let go. You choose peace over pride. That choice, simple as it seems, is what it means to have a kind heart. It's not about being perfect. It's about choosing compassion over cruelty, again and again, until it becomes your natural response. And here's the beauty. Kindness heals not only the receiver, but also the giver. Every time you choose kindness, you soften your own suffering. You release yourself from the heavy chains of resentment and anger. The act may appear outward, but its deepest blessing is inward. So when we say a kind heart is the greatest blessing, we are not praising shallow niceness. We are pointing to a profound truth. A kind heart is the foundation of true freedom. Without it, even the richest person is poor. With it, even the poorest person carries a treasure beyond measure. But if this blessing is so powerful, why does it matter more than wealth, fame, or beauty, things that the world seems to value above all else? To answer that, we must explore the blessings that cannot be taken away. The treasures that no thief, no time, no misfortune can ever steal. When we think of blessings, most of us picture things we can touch. Money in the bank, a roof over our head, good health, maybe even the respect of others. And yes, these are blessings. But here is the problem: they are fragile. They can vanish in a moment. Wealth can be stolen. Fame can fade. Youth slips quietly through our fingers, no matter how tightly we cling to it. Even relationships, as precious as they are not guaranteed to last forever. If our sense of blessing depends only on things that can be lost, then our happiness will always be at the mercy of change. But there are treasures life cannot steal. They live not in the outside world, but in the heart, and chief among them is kindness. A kind heart cannot be robbed from you. No thief can take it, no storm can wash it away, no fire can burn it to ash. Even when everything else is stripped bare, the kindness within you remains your own. It is the one wealth that is carried beyond the grave. Think of great civilizations of the past. Their palaces have crumbled. Their armies are long gone. Their treasures lie buried in dust. But the stories of compassion endure. We remember the gentle, the merciful, the ones who chose kindness when cruelty was easier. Their kindness outlived their kingdoms. That is the nature of this blessing. It is eternal. Now, imagine a person with riches but without kindness. People may serve them, but not out of love, only out of fear or obligation. Their fortune buys comfort, but it cannot buy genuine warmth, nor can it shield them from loneliness. On the other hand, picture someone with little material wealth, but a heart that overflows with compassion. They may not own much, but wherever they go, they are welcomed. People remember them, cherish them, feel uplifted in their presence. Their wealth is invisible, yet undeniable. This is why Buddhist teachings emphasize the heart above all else. The world may take everything from you, but it cannot take who you choose to be. And when you choose kindness, you carry with you a blessing that endures through every rise and fall of fortune. And here's the paradox. When you cultivate kindness, you often discover that even material blessings begin to flow more naturally. People trust you more. Opportunities open. Communities support you, not because you demanded it, but because kindness has a magnetic quality. It draws goodwill the way sunlight draws flowers to bloom. But even if none of that comes, the greatest gift remains untouched: peace of mind. No one can steal the serenity of a heart that rests in compassion. So when we ask ourselves, what is the greatest blessing? We must look beyond possessions, beyond titles, beyond the fleeting gifts of fortune. The answer lies in the treasures that cannot be stolen, and above all, in the simple, enduring grace of a kind heart. And yet, the beauty of kindness is not only in its permanence. It is in the way it moves, multiplies, and spreads far beyond us. A single kind act is never truly small. It ripples outward, touching lives we may never even meet. Have you ever dropped a pebble into still water and watched the ripples expand? One small circle grows wider and wider, touching the whole surface of the lake. That is the perfect image of kindness. No act of compassion, no matter how small, ever stops with the one who receives it. It moves outward, unseen, creating waves that continue long after the moment has passed. Imagine a child who is struggling at school. One teacher takes a moment to speak gently, to encourage rather than criticize. That single act of kindness plants a seed of confidence. Years later, that child grows into an adult who believes in themselves. And because of that, they too extend kindness to others. The teacher may never know the ripple they created, but the world is forever changed by it. Or picture the stranger who holds the door open when your hands are full, who offers a warm smile when you're having a bad day. It seems like nothing, just a tiny gesture. But in that instant, the burden on your heart feels lighter. Maybe it inspires you to be gentler with your family when you get home. Maybe your patience saves someone else from anger, and so the ripple continues, moving far beyond the original act. The Buddha once taught that wholesome actions are like seeds planted in fertile soil. They may seem small at first, almost invisible, but with time they grow into great trees, offering shade, fruit, and shelter to countless beings. Kindness works the same way. A kind word, a compassionate glance, a helping hand, each is a seed. And the forest it grows is vast beyond what we can imagine. But there is another truth here. Just as kindness ripples outward, so too does cruelty. Harsh words, selfish acts, indifference, they spread pain like poison in water. The question is not whether we are creating ripples. The question is, what kind of ripples are we leaving behind? In today's world where so many feel disconnected and alone, even the smallest kindness can be revolutionary. A message of support sent to someone who is struggling, a moment of listening without judgment, a willingness to forgive. These are not grand gestures, yet they can shift the entire atmosphere of a life. And here is the hidden beauty. Kindness ripples back to us as well. The compassion we give often finds its way home, though not always in the form we expect. It may return as trust, as friendship, as a helping hand when we need it most. The ripples circle back because the heart that gives kindness also attracts it. So when we wonder whether our small acts matter, let us remember the ripples. Let us remember that no kindness is wasted. Even if it seems unnoticed, it moves, it grows, it changes the unseen currents of the world. And in this truth lies something profound. Kindness is not only a blessing for the one who holds it. It becomes a blessing for everyone it touches, spreading like light in all directions. But how do we know this is real? How do we see these ripples most clearly? The answer lies in the stories, timeless lessons from the Buddhist tradition, where the power of kindness has been shown again and again. For thousands of years, the heart of Buddhism has been carried through stories. Stories that remind us of what it truly means to be human and of the invisible power that kindness holds. These are not just tales for children. They are mirrors, reflecting back to us the possibilities of our own hearts. One of the most cherished collections in Buddhist tradition is the Jataka tales, stories of the Buddha's past lives before he attained enlightenment. In each lifetime, he practiced different virtues, preparing his heart for the Great Awakening. And again, kindness shines at the center. There is a story of a time when the Bodhisattva, the being destined to become the Buddha, was born as a compassionate prince. One day he saw a starving tigress with her cubs. Weak and desperate, she was close to devouring her own young. The prince, moved by a heart overflowing with compassion, offered his own body to feed her, saving both the mother and her cubs. That act of ultimate kindness was not about sacrifice for the sake of glory. It was about the recognition that all life is precious, that suffering deserves compassion no matter whose suffering it is. Another story tells of a bodhisattva born as a wise rabbit. When a hungry traveler appeared with nothing to eat, the rabbit leapt into the fire, offering himself as food. Yet, instead of perishing, the traveler revealed himself to be a heavenly being testing the rabbit's compassion. The rabbit's kindness was celebrated, his image forever marked upon the moon, a reminder that true greatness lies not in taking but in giving. And it wasn't only in mythical lifetimes that kindness shone. Even in the Buddha's final life as Siddhartha Gautama, compassion was the essence of his path. When he attained enlightenment, his first thought was not of escape from the world, but of how to share the truth so that others could also find freedom from suffering. His heart could not bear to keep wisdom for himself alone. But Buddhist teachings are not only about the Buddha himself. They remind us of countless monks, nuns, and lay followers who carried kindness into the fabric of daily life. There are stories of monks giving up their food to feed the hungry, of disciples walking miles just to comfort the sick, of ordinary villagers choosing generosity even when they had little. The message is always the same. True wealth is measured not by what you keep, but by what you give. And these stories are not locked in the past. They are alive today. When we hear of someone paying for a stranger's meal or communities uniting to help those struck by disaster, we are witnessing modern-day Jataka tales. The forms may have changed, but the essence is timeless. So what do these stories teach us? That kindness is not an abstract idea. It is something we live, something we embody, and the more we practice it, the more natural it becomes. Yet kindness is not always celebrated in a world that mistakes aggression for strength. To see the full power of compassion, we must look deeper, beyond appearances, beyond surface gestures, to discover how kindness is, in fact, the greatest strength of all. When we think of strength, what comes to mind? Muscles, armies, influence, the ability to bend others to our will. For most of history, that is how the world has defined power. The conquerors, the rulers, the wealthy, they are the ones society points to and says, here is strength. But Buddhism teaches us something radically different. True strength is not the ability to dominate others. It is the ability to master oneself, to overcome anger with patience, greed with generosity, and hatred with compassion. Anyone can lash out when insulted. Anyone can seek revenge when hurt. But to meet cruelty with kindness, that requires a strength far greater than any weapon. The Buddha once said, "Greater in battle than the man who would conquer 1,000 men 1,000 times is he who would conquer just one himself." This is the heart of kindness as strength. The victory is not over others, but over the restless storms within us. Think of a person who responds to harsh criticism with calm understanding. Outwardly, it may look like softness, but in reality, it is steel, the steel of self-mastery, of not letting anger control them. That is strength. Or consider a parent who wakes at midnight to soothe a crying child. Their body is exhausted, yet their heart remains tender. That gentleness is not weakness. It is power fueled by love. Even in great stories of the Buddha's life, we see this truth. When Devadatta, his own cousin, tried to harm him out of jealousy, the Buddha did not retaliate. He stood firm in compassion, unshaken by hatred. That was not passivity, it was courage beyond measure. Kindness is not about letting the world trample over you. It is about choosing a response that does not add to the suffering. It is the power to stop the cycle of harm. When someone strikes us with anger and we strike back, the chain continues. But when we meet it with compassion, the chain breaks. That is the strength of kindness. It interrupts the endless repetition of pain. And here is the paradox. The world often mistakes cruelty for strength, but cruelty is easy. It requires no discipline, no wisdom. True strength lies in restraint, in the ability to remain open-hearted even when the world would justify closing off. To live with a kind heart in a harsh world is an act of bravery. It means daring to stay soft in a society that glorifies hardness. It means believing that compassion is stronger than fear, that love is stronger than hate. And when we practice this strength, something remarkable happens. Our daily lives begin to change, relationships soften, conflicts dissolve, peace becomes possible. Because kindness is not only a private virtue, it is a power that transforms the world around us. But strength, to be real, must be lived. It must be practiced in the small moments of daily life, in the words we choose, the actions we take, the way we hold ourselves in times of difficulty. That is where kindness reveals itself not as a theory, but as a living force. It's one thing to admire kindness as an idea, but quite another to weave it into the fabric of daily life. The real challenge is not knowing that kindness matters, it's remembering to live it when the world pulls us in the opposite direction. Kindness begins not with grand gestures, but with the smallest of choices. It lives in the words we speak, the tone of our voice, the patience we offer in moments of irritation. A kind life is not built in a single day. It is built in countless little acts, again and again, until compassion becomes as natural as breathing. The Buddha often emphasized this truth. He did not ask his followers to withdraw completely from the world, but to walk through it mindfully, turning ordinary moments into opportunities for practice. Kindness, he taught, is not limited to meditation halls or temples. It belongs in marketplaces, kitchens, streets, and homes. Think about the way you greet the people you see every day. A simple smile to the barista who makes your coffee, a word of thanks to the person cleaning the street, a gentle tone when speaking to a child. These things may seem small, but they carry weight. For someone who feels invisible, that small recognition may mean everything. And kindness is not limited to our words. It can live in our silence as well. Sometimes, the greatest kindness is simply to listen, not to fix, not to argue, but to hold space for another person's pain. To listen without judgment is to say, "You are worthy of being heard, you matter." Of course, life is busy. We rush from one task to another, often forgetting the people right in front of us. But this is where mindfulness becomes essential. When we bring awareness into each moment, we begin to notice the opportunities for kindness that were always there. The door to kindness is open not by force but by presence. Let's take an example. Imagine you're at the grocery store and the line is moving slowly. Frustration rises. The cashier seems distracted, but then you pause. You notice the fatigue in her eyes, the heaviness in her shoulders. Instead of snapping, you choose patience. Maybe you even say a gentle word of encouragement. That moment of kindness may lift her spirit, shift her entire day. And for you, it transforms impatience into peace. Kindness is also a discipline. It requires us to soften our ego, to let go of the need to always be right, to always win. It means asking, what does this situation truly need, rather than what do I want to get? Sometimes the kindest act is forgiveness. Sometimes it's restraint. Sometimes it's offering help before being asked. And let us not forget, kindness also applies inward. A kind heart toward others must be balanced with a kind heart toward ourselves. To live harshly with our own mistakes while showing compassion to the world is incomplete. True kindness begins at home, with patience for our own flaws, with gentleness toward our own journey. The beauty of practicing kindness daily is that it doesn't just bless others, it transforms us. Slowly, our minds grow lighter. Resentments fade more quickly. Gratitude flows more easily. We discover that kindness is not a sacrifice but a source of joy. And as kindness becomes habit, it naturally connects with something deeper. Each act plants a seed in the field of karma, shaping the conditions of our future in ways we may not see yet, but will one day surely reap. Every action we take is like planting a seed. Some seeds grow quickly, sprouting almost overnight. Others take months, years, or even lifetimes before their roots break the soil. This is the law of karma, the understanding that what we sow through thought, word, and deed will one day return to us. Kindness, too, has its karma. When we choose compassion over cruelty, patience over anger, generosity over greed, we are planting seeds that will blossom into blessings. These blessings may not always appear in the form we expect. They may not come as wealth, fame, or recognition. Instead, they arrive as peace in the heart, harmony in relationships, and an invisible protection that shields us in times of hardship. The Buddha taught that a kind act is never lost. Even if it seems unnoticed, even if the world appears indifferent, the seed has already been planted in the fabric of existence. Sooner or later, the fruit will ripen. Think of the farmer who tends his field. He cannot demand that the crops grow in a day. He trusts the process, knowing that the soil, the rain, and the sun will do their work in time. Kindness works in the same way. Every smile, every act of generosity, every moment of forgiveness is like watering the soil of life. Eventually, it blooms, sometimes in ways we never imagined. There are countless stories from Buddhist tradition that reveal this truth. One tells of a poor woman who offered the Buddha a single lamp, though she had almost nothing. The wealthy brought hundreds of lamps, brighter and more impressive, but it was her single flame that burned the longest, untouched by the wind. Why? Because it was offered with pure kindness, free of pride. Her small act of compassion carried immeasurable karmic weight. And in our own lives, we've seen how kindness returns. Have you ever helped someone, only to find help come back to you in an unexpected moment of need? Or forgiven a mistake, only to find forgiveness extended to you later? The cycle is not always obvious, but it is always turning. Karma is not punishment or reward from some external judge. It is simply cause and effect. Just as planting mango seeds yields mangoes, not thorns, so too planting kindness yields joy, not sorrow. But here is the subtle beauty. The karma of kindness begins immediately, even before the fruits appear. The very moment we act kindly, our own heart feels lighter. We don't need to wait years to enjoy its sweetness. It begins right here in the present. And so, kindness becomes not just a gift to others, but a gift to ourselves. It frees us from bitterness, softens our fears, and creates a life that is rich in meaning. When we understand this, kindness is no longer a burden, nor is it a performance to gain something in return. It becomes natural, effortless, because we see that it is aligned with the deepest laws of the universe. To live kindly is to live in harmony with karma itself. And when countless seeds of kindness are planted over a lifetime, imagine the garden that blooms, a life of peace, a death without fear, a legacy that continues long after we are gone. Look around. Our world has never been more connected, yet never have so many people felt so alone. We live in an age of information where news travels faster than light, but compassion often lags behind. We scroll endlessly through screens filled with conflict, anger, and division. Nations argue, communities fracture, families drift apart. And in this noise, kindness seems almost forgotten. But it is precisely in times like these that kindness becomes not just a virtue but a necessity. When fear rises, when hatred spreads, when greed consumes, kindness is the medicine. It is the antidote to the poison of division. The Buddha lived in a time of political unrest, of kingdoms at war, of suffering everywhere. Yet his answer was not more weapons, not more power. His answer was compassion. His teachings were a reminder that lasting peace can never be built on violence. It can only arise from hearts transformed by kindness. Today, we need that reminder more than ever. Consider the challenges of our modern age. Technology that isolates us even as it connects us, climate change that threatens our shared home, social systems that leave millions feeling unseen. These are not just problems of politics or economics. They are problems of the heart. They are symptoms of forgetting our shared humanity. Kindness is what reconnects us. It reminds us that the stranger across the street, the voice on the other side of the world, the refugee, the worker, the neighbor, they are not other. They are us. To see them with a kind heart is to dissolve the illusion of separation. And kindness is not abstract. It is tangible, practical. A word of encouragement to someone struggling with depression. A meal offered to someone hungry. A decision to protect the environment not out of fear, but out of love for generations yet unborn. Each act may feel small, but together they weave a fabric strong enough to hold a broken world. Music rises gently, filled with a hopeful undertone. The Dalai Lama once said, "My religion is very simple. My religion is kindness." That truth feels more urgent now than ever. For what use are our achievements, our progress, our wealth, if we lose the ability to care for one another? We cannot wait for governments or leaders to change everything. The transformation begins where we are, in our homes, in our friendships, in the way we treat the people we pass by each day. If millions of us live with kindness, the world itself will begin to shift. And here is the miracle: kindness is contagious. When we witness it, we are inspired to act. When we receive it, we are softened to give it back. It spreads not through force, but through resonance, like ripples on water reaching distant shores. The world does not need more perfection. It does not need more power. It needs hearts willing to remain open, even in the face of pain. It needs people brave enough to be gentle. For in the end, kindness is not just about improving the world outside. It is about awakening the world within, the world of compassion, patience, and love that has always been there, waiting to be lived. We have traveled together through reflection, stories, and truths, all circling back to one simple, radiant reality. A kind heart is the greatest blessing. Not wealth, which can be stolen. Not beauty, which fades with age. Not power, which slips like sand through fingers. But kindness, pure, steady, unshakable. This is the treasure that no thief can steal, no fire can burn, no time can erode. A kind heart is wealth that multiplies the more it is shared. It is beauty that deepens with age. It is power that does not oppress but uplifts. And unlike all other blessings, it is one that follows us beyond this life, shaping not only our present but also the unseen path ahead. The Buddha once said, "If you light a lamp for someone else, it will also brighten your path." This is the eternal law of kindness. Each act illuminates not only the world around us, but also the chambers of our own heart. Think of the journey we each walk. There will be days of joy and days of sorrow, times when the road is clear and times when shadows fall heavy. Yet if we carry a kind heart, we are never truly lost. For kindness is both compass and light, guiding us, steadying us, reminding us that even the smallest act of compassion ripples out in ways we cannot measure. And when the final chapter of our lives is written, it will not be our possessions or accomplishments that matter most. It will be the love we gave, the compassion we offered, the moments of kindness that stitched together the story of who we were. So let us live with this blessing. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. Let us choose kindness in the small, the ordinary, the unseen. For in truth, there is no such thing as a small act of kindness. Every act carries infinite weight. If the world is ever to heal, it will not be through louder voices or stronger fists. It will be through hearts that dare to remain kind. And so, as we close this journey, may we carry these words not just in our minds, but in our lives. A kind heart is not weakness. A kind heart is not naivete. A kind heart is the greatest blessing. And before we part ways, if these reflections touched your heart, let this not be the end of our journey together. Here, at Zen Buddhism Wisdom, we share teachings, stories, and insights that help us walk with more clarity, more peace, and more compassion in this busy world. If this message resonated with you, I invite you to subscribe, not as a follower of a channel, but as a fellow traveler on the path of wisdom. Share this with someone who may need a reminder of the quiet power of kindness. and let us continue to water these seeds of compassion together. May your days be gentle. May your heart remain kind. And may you carry this greatest blessing wherever you go.